I'm sitting here, 3 months later, staring at these ultrasound photos spread across my kitchen table, the black and white images that once represented everything I'd ever wanted. Two little beans. Twins. Except they were never real. My wife, Sarah, was never pregnant. Not for a single day of the 6 months she convinced me we were having babies. Let me take you back to the moment that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March when Sarah burst through our front door, practically glowing with excitement. I was making coffee, still in my pajamas, when she waved this grainy piece of paper in front of my face. "Honey, sit down," she said, her voice trembling with what I thought was joy. I set my mug down, my heart already racing. We'd been trying for 3 years, 3 long, painful years of negative tests, false hopes, and devastating miscarriages that had nearly torn us apart. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The world stopped. Then she handed me the ultrasound photo and I saw them, 2 tiny shapes side by side. "Twins," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We're having twins." I collapsed onto our couch, staring at that image like it was made of gold. After everything we'd been through, this felt like a miracle. Sarah, curled up next to me, placing my hand on her still flat stomach. "I can't believe it," I kept saying. I can't believe it. Neither could I, apparently, because none of it was real. You see, what I didn't know that Tuesday morning was that Sarah had downloaded a fake ultrasound app the night before. She'd spent 20 minutes creating those perfect twin images, complete with realistic measurements and dates. The doctor's appointment she'd gone to that morning. She'd sat in a McDonald's parking lot for 2 hours perfecting her story. The woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman I'd trusted with my heart, my future, my dreams of being a father. She looked me straight in the eye and built our entire future on a lie. For 6 months, I lived in a bubble of pure happiness. I told everyone. My parents, my co-workers, my best friends. We planned their nursery, bought double strollers, picked out names. I even started working overtime to save for college funds. All of it. Fake. How could the woman I loved for 8 years fake an entire pregnancy for 6 months? To understand how I fell for something so elaborate, you need to know about Sarah and me. We weren't some unstable couple heading for divorce. We were solid. Or at least I thought we were. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Portland 8 years ago. I was the guy who spilled his latte all over her laptop, and somehow, instead of screaming at me, she laughed. That laugh. God, I fell in love with. That laugh before I even knew her name. Sarah was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. Smart, funny, ambitious. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a local nonprofit, and she genuinely cared about making the world better. We moved in together after 6 months, got married 2 years later in her parents' backyard. It felt like a fairy tale. Then we decided to start a family. That's when everything changed. The first year of trying was fun, exciting even. Every month brought new hope, new possibilities. But month after month, the tests came back negative. Sarah started tracking everything, her temperature, her cycles, her ovulation windows. Our bedroom became less about love and more about schedules and timing. Year 2 brought our first pregnancy. For 8 beautiful weeks, we were going to be parents. We told our families, started making plans, even bought a crib on sale. Then Sarah started bleeding at work one afternoon, and just like that, it was over. The miscarriage hit Sarah harder than I'd ever seen anything affect her. She blamed herself, even though the doctor assured us it wasn't anyone's fault. She became obsessed with trying again, with proving her body could do what it was supposed to do. The second pregnancy lasted only 5 weeks. The third, just 4. By year 3, the joy was completely gone. Sarah would disappear into the bathroom with pregnancy tests, and I'd wait outside the door, already knowing from her silence what the answer would be. We stopped talking about baby names. We stopped walking past the baby section at Target. We started having the kind of fights that left us sleeping in separate rooms. That's when I said it. The thing I'll regret for the rest of my life. Maybe we should consider that this isn't meant to happen for us, I told her one night after another negative test. Maybe we should think about other options, or Maybe we're just not meant to be parents. Sarah stared at me like I'd slapped her. Are you saying you want to give up on us? I'm saying maybe we need to accept reality and decide if we can be happy without kids. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. Looking back now, I realize that conversation planted the seed of everything that came after. Sarah heard me questioning our future, and in her mind, she was losing me. The pregnancy lie wasn't just about babies. It was about saving our marriage. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that 3 months later, my wife was pregnant, with twins, and I was the happiest man alive. How wrong I was. The months after Sarah's pregnancy announcement were the happiest of my life. I'm not exaggerating. I walked around with a permanent smile, telling anyone who would listen that we were having twins. Sarah was incredible during those months. She played the part perfectly. Morning sickness that had her rushing to the bathroom at exactly the right times. Weird food cravings that had me running to the store at midnight for pickles and ice cream. She even started showing at the right timeline, her belly growing round and firm under her loosening clothes. I was completely invested. We spent entire weekends at baby stores comparing cribs and car seats. We'll need 2 of everything, Sarah would say, rubbing her belly with this content smile. I'd put my hand next to hers, hoping to feel a kick, but she'd always say it was too early, or they were sleeping, or they just stopped moving. The nursery became my obsession. I painted it a soft yellow since we were keeping the genders a surprise. I assembled 2 cribs side by side and spent hours in that room just imagining our future. Sarah would find me there sometimes, just standing and staring at the empty cribs. You're going to be such a good dad, she'd say, wrapping her arms around me from behind. God, I believed her. We told everyone. My parents cried when we called them. My mom immediately started knitting 2 baby blankets, one blue, one pink, hedging her bets. Sarah's parents were over the moon too, especially after years of watching their daughter struggle with infertility. My co-workers threw us a surprise party at the office. My best friend Jake started calling me Papa Bear and asking if I was ready for sleepless nights. Everyone had advice. Everyone had stories. Everyone was so genuinely happy for us. The baby shower was the hardest part to watch later, knowing the truth. 30 people crammed into Sarah's sister's living room, all of them bringing gifts for babies that didn't exist. Sarah sat in the center of it all, opening tiny clothes and blankets, tears in her eyes as she thanked everyone for their love and support. I recorded everything. Hours of video of Sarah opening presents, talking about how grateful she was, how excited we were to meet our little ones. She was either the best actress in the world, or some part of her actually believed her own lie. The registry was massive. 2 car seats, 2 bouncers, 2 high chairs, 2 of everything. I worked overtime every week to afford it all, but I didn't care. These were our babies, our miracle babies, and nothing was too good for them. Sarah started wearing maternity clothes. Around month 4, she'd stand sideways in front of mirrors admiring her profile, asking me if I thought she was getting too big too fast. Twins make you show earlier, she'd say, like she'd researched everything, and she had researched everything. That's what made it so convincing. She knew exactly when morning sickness should start and stop. She knew when the babies should start moving, when they should respond to sound, when they should start kicking. She had answers for every question, explanations for every milestone. The doctor's appointments were always scheduled for days when I had to work. It's just routine stuff, she'd say. Plus, with COVID restrictions, they're only allowing 1 person anyway. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? But that trust was about to cost me everything. Looking back now with the clarity that only comes after your world has been completely shattered, the warning signs seem so obvious. How did I miss them? How did love make me so blind? The first red flag should have been the appointments. Every single doctor's visit, every ultrasound, every checkup happened when I couldn't be there. At first, Sarah's explanations made sense. COVID restrictions were real and many hospitals were limiting visitors. But it was always something. Work schedules, timing conflicts, sudden rescheduling. The doctor wants to see me again next week, she'd say casually like it was no big deal. just to double-check their growth. Twin pregnancies need extra monitoring. I'd offer to take time off to rearrange my schedule, but there was always a reason why it wouldn't work out. The second red flag was her refusal to let me feel the baby's kick. For months, I'd place my hand on her belly, waiting for that magical moment every expecting father dreams about. Sarah would tense up immediately. "They're not active right now," she'd say, gently moving my hand away. "Or they just stopped when you touched. Babies can be shy, even in the womb." Sometimes she'd claim to feel them moving when I wasn't looking, pressing her hands to her stomach, with wonder in her eyes. "Oh, did you feel that?" But by the time I'd rush over, they'd be still again. "They have their own schedule," she'd explain. "The doctor says that's completely normal." The third red flag was how she handled any medical topic. Sarah, who used to WebMD every minor symptom, suddenly became vague about her pregnancy details. When I'd ask specific questions about her appointments, she'd give generic answers. "How much weight should you be gaining with twins?" I'd ask. "The doctor says I'm right on track," she'd respond, never giving actual numbers. "What did the ultrasound show this time?" "Everything looks perfect. They're measuring exactly where they should be." She started getting defensive when I'd push for details. "Why are you questioning everything?" she'd snap. "Don't you trust me? Don't you trust our doctor?" The fourth red flag was her behavior around other pregnant women. My coworker's wife was pregnant around the same time, and whenever the topic came up, Sarah would change the subject or find reasons to leave the room. At social gatherings, she'd avoid other moms and pregnant women entirely. "I don't want to compare pregnancies," she'd explain. "Every experience is different, and I don't want to stress myself out with other people's stories." The biggest red flag was her phone. Sarah, who used to leave her phone lying around anywhere, suddenly guarded it like state secrets. She'd take it to the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, never let it out of her sight. When I'd ask to see ultrasound photos she claimed were on her phone, she'd always have technical excuses. "The app is being weird," she'd say. "I'll show you later when it's working." Later never came, but love makes you stupid, hope makes you blind. I wanted this pregnancy to be real so desperately that I explained away every inconsistency, every excuse, every red flag. "She's just being protective," I'd tell myself. "After everything we've been through, she's scared something will go wrong." Thought I was being supportive by not pushing too hard, by giving her space to handle the pregnancy her way. What I was really doing was enabling the biggest lie of my life. March 15th, the day my entire world collapsed. I was at work when Sarah called, her voice panicked and breathless. "Something's wrong," she sobbed into the phone. "I'm having contractions. I think the babies are coming early." My blood went cold. We were only at 32 weeks, premature twins, the complications, the NICU stays, the potential problems. I told my boss I was leaving and drove home at dangerous speeds, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I found Sarah in our bedroom, doubled over in what looked like genuine pain. Her face was flushed, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It hurts so bad," she gasped. "We need to get to the hospital now." I helped her to the car, my mind racing through everything I knew about premature labor. The drive to the hospital was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Sarah gripped my hand, breathing heavily, playing the part of a woman in labor perfectly. We rushed into the emergency room, and I'll never forget what happened next. "My wife is in labor," I announced to the triage nurse. "She's 32 weeks pregnant, with twins." The nurse looked at Sarah, then at me, then back at Sarah. "What's your wife's name and date of birth?" I gave her the information, watching as she typed into her computer. The pause that followed lasted forever. "I'm sorry," the nurse said slowly, "but we don't have any prenatal records for your wife. Has she been seeing a doctor here?" "No, but..." "This is an emergency," I insisted. "She's having contractions, the babies are coming." The nurse's expression changed. She called for a doctor, and within minutes, Sarah was on a gurney being wheeled into an examination room. I held her hand as they hooked her up to monitors, my heart pounding with fear for our babies. That's when the world ended. The doctor, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, finished the ultrasound and turned to face us both. Her expression was one of confusion mixed with concern. "Ma'am," she said gently to Sarah, "there's no pregnancy. Your uterus shows no signs of ever having been pregnant recently. There are no babies, no evidence of pregnancy at all." The room went silent except for the beeping of monitors. I stared at the doctor, then at the ultrasound screen showing nothing but empty space where our twins should have been. "That can't be right," I said. "Check again. She's been pregnant for 7 months. We have ultrasound photos. We've been preparing." The doctor's eyes were full of sympathy as she looked between Sarah and me. "Sir, I understand this is confusing, but there is no pregnancy. Has your wife been seeing a psychiatrist or therapist? Sometimes when people want something very badly." I turned to look at Sarah, expecting to see the same shock and confusion I was feeling. Instead, I saw guilt, pure, undeniable guilt written across her face. "Sarah," I whispered. She couldn't meet my eyes. The woman who had been in labor minutes before was now perfectly still, no longer gripping her stomach, no longer breathing heavily. "Sarah, what's going on?" The dam broke. She started crying. Not the tears of a woman losing her babies, but the tears of someone whose lie had finally caught up with her. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far." The doctor quietly excused herself, giving us privacy for what was clearly a personal crisis rather than a medical emergency. "What do you mean you never meant for it to go this far?" My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else. "I was never pregnant," she whispered. "The ultrasounds were fake. The whole thing was fake. I thought if I could make you happy, if I could give you what you wanted, you wouldn't leave me." I sat down hard in the chair next to her bed, the room spinning around me. "Leave you? Sarah, what are you talking about? That night when we weren't meant to be parents, you were giving up on us, on our family. I could see it in your eyes. You were already gone. So you faked a pregnancy?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "At first, it was just going to be for a few days, to make you happy again. But you were so excited, so in love with the idea of the babies. I couldn't take that away from you. I kept thinking I'd figure out how to end it. But then everyone knew, and everyone was so happy for us." I stared at this woman I thought I knew. This woman who had let me tell my parents they were going to be grandparents, who had accepted baby shower gifts from our friends, who had watched me work overtime to afford cribs for babies that didn't exist. 6 months, Sarah. You lied to me for 6 months. I know it was wrong, but I love you so much and I was so scared of losing you. Love. She called this love. But what I was looking at wasn't love at all. It was the most selfish, manipulative thing anyone had ever done to me. And this was just the beginning of discovering how deep her deception really went. The drive home from the hospital was silent. Sarah had stopped crying, but I couldn't even look at her. My mind was reeling, trying to process the magnitude of what had just happened. 6 months of lies. 6 months of believing I was going to be a father. 6 months of planning, hoping, dreaming about our future. All fake. When we got home, Sarah went straight to our bedroom and closed the door. I stood in our living room looking around at the evidence of her deception. Baby books on the coffee table, ultrasound photos on the refrigerator, a list of baby names in her handwriting stuck to the kitchen counter. That's when something inside me snapped. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry, and I wanted answers. I started in the most obvious place, the ultrasound photos. I grabbed them off the fridge and really looked at them for the first time with a critical eye. The quality was strange, almost too perfect. The background didn't match what I remembered from our previous pregnancy losses. I pulled out my phone and did something I should have done months ago. I reverse-searched the images. The results made my stomach drop. Fake ultrasound generator. Create realistic pregnancy photos. Multiple websites offering the exact service Sarah had used. I clicked through them, seeing templates that looked exactly like our twin ultrasound. You could customize everything. The dates, the measurements, even add multiple babies. My hands were shaking as I kept searching. How to fake a pregnancy. Fake pregnancy apps. pregnancy simulation. The internet was full of information about exactly what Sarah had done to me. I needed to know more. I needed to know everything. Sarah's laptop was sitting on the kitchen counter. I'd never snooped through her things before. We'd always respected each other's privacy. But this wasn't about privacy anymore. This was about discovering the truth about the woman I'd married. Her browser history told the entire story. March 10th, 5 days before she'd shown me the ultrasound. Searches for twin pregnancy symptoms. Fake ultrasound apps. How long can you fake a pregnancy? April 2nd. Pregnancy pillows. Fake baby bump. Silicone pregnancy belly. May 15th. What to say at doctor appointments when faking pregnancy. COVID restrictions pregnancy appointments. The deeper I went, the more elaborate her deception became. She'd joined online forums where people discussed faking pregnancies. She'd researched every detail, every symptom, every milestone. She'd even found tutorials on how to make your stomach look bigger using padding and shapewear. I found the pregnancy pillow hidden in the back of our bedroom closet, a silicone, belly designed to simulate pregnancy. It even had different sizes for different stages. Sarah had been strapping this thing to her body every day, making her pregnancy look authentic. But the worst discovery was in her email. She'd been corresponding with other women who had faked pregnancies, trading tips, sharing experiences, talking about their relationships like they were the victims. One email chain made my blood boil. "My husband is so happy now," Sarah had written. "I know I'll have to tell him eventually, but for now he's the man I fell in love with again. He's working extra hours to provide for our babies, and he looks at me like I'm a miracle. I forgot what it felt like to be loved like this." Another woman had responded, "Enjoy it while it lasts. The hard part is figuring out how to end it. Some women fake miscarriages, others say they lose the babies during delivery. You have to be prepared for the devastation it will cause, but if it saves your marriage, it might be worth it." Sarah had replied, "I keep hoping I'll actually get pregnant before I have to confess. Like maybe this fake pregnancy will turn into a real one, and none of this will matter." I slammed the laptop closed, my entire body shaking with rage. This wasn't a desperate mistake. This wasn't a moment of panic that spiraled out of control. This was calculated, premeditated, researched. Sarah had spent weeks planning how to manipulate me, how to fake the most intimate experience two people can share. She'd joined communities of other women doing the same thing, treating the destruction of their husband's trust like it was some kind of game. But what destroyed me most was that last email. She'd been hoping to get actually pregnant to cover up her lie, which meant she'd been willing to bring a real child into this mess, to use an innocent baby to hide her deception. I sat in that kitchen until dawn, reading through months of lies, discovering the full extent of what my wife had done to me. And I realized something that chilled me to the bone. If she could lie about this, what else had she lied about? The next morning, I printed everything. Every email, every browser search, every forum post. I organized it all in a folder like evidence for a trial because that's exactly what it was. Evidence of the systematic destruction of our marriage. Sarah finally emerged from our bedroom around noon, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at me sitting at the kitchen table with the folder in front of me, and I saw her face go pale. "We need to talk," I said. She sat down across from me, her hands folded in her lap like a child called to the principal's office. "I know everything." I started opening the folder. "The apps, the forums, the fake belly, the other women you were talking to, all of it." Sarah's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "6 months ago, when you showed me that ultrasound, you didn't just lie to me about being pregnant. You made a calculated decision to manipulate and deceive me in the cruelest way possible." "It wasn't like that," she finally whispered. "Then what was it like, Sarah? Because I have your emails. I know you planned this. I know you researched how to fake symptoms, how to buy fake ultrasound equipment, how to maintain the lie for months." I slid one of the printed emails across the table. "Explain this. Explain how you told a stranger that you were enjoying watching me work overtime to provide for babies that didn't exist." Sarah stared at the paper, tears falling onto the printed words. I never meant to hurt you. You never meant to hurt me. Sarah, I told my parents they were going to be grandparents. I worked 60-hour weeks to save money for college funds. I spent hours in that nursery, planning our future with children who were never real. I know it was wrong, but what? You thought you'd get pregnant for real and none of this would matter? You were willing to bring an actual child into this nightmare to cover up your lies. Sarah broke down completely then, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. I was scared, she choked out. I was so scared you were going to leave me. When you said maybe we weren't meant to be parents, I heard you giving up on us. So you decided to save our marriage by destroying any possibility that I could ever trust you again? She looked up at me with desperate eyes. Can't we work through this? Can't we go to counseling? I made a mistake, but it came from love. Love? I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. Sarah, love doesn't involve systematic deception. Love doesn't involve joining forums to learn how to manipulate your husband. Love doesn't involve fake pregnancies and fake ultrasounds and fake everything. Please, she begged, don't throw away 8 years over this. I'm not throwing away 8 years. You threw them away the moment you decided our entire relationship was built on lies. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. The legal reality was complicated. What Sarah had done wasn't technically fraud in the criminal sense. She hadn't stolen money or committed a financial crime, but it was fraud in every other way that mattered. She'd obtained emotional and financial resources under false pretenses. This kind of emotional manipulation can be grounds for divorce, the lawyer explained. The fake pregnancy, the elaborate deception, the financial impact of her lies. It all contributes to a case for divorce based on extreme mental cruelty. I documented everything. The money I'd spent on baby furniture, the overtime hours I'd worked, the emotional distress of believing I was going to be a father and then having that ripped away. The lawyer said it was one of the most calculated cases of spousal deception he'd ever seen. But the legal consequences were nothing compared to the social ones. Word travels fast in a small community. Within days, everyone knew. My parents, who had been knitting baby blankets and converting their spare room into a grandparent's paradise. Sarah's co-workers, who had thrown her a baby shower. Our friends, who had been planning to help us when the twins arrived. The shame wasn't mine to carry, but I felt it anyway. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen through such an elaborate lie? Sarah lost her job when her employer found out. Apparently, she'd been using pregnancy as an excuse for multiple absences and special accommodations. She'd even applied for maternity leave benefits for a pregnancy that didn't exist. But the worst part was watching the people who had loved and supported us try to process what had happened. My mother called me crying, asking if Sarah was having a mental breakdown. Sarah's own sister called her a sociopath and said she never wanted to see her again. Our marriage was over, not just because of the lies, but because of what the lies revealed about the person I'd been sharing my life with. Sarah wasn't the woman I'd fallen in love with. Maybe she never had been. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. 8 months of legal paperwork, mediation sessions, and dividing up the remnants of a life we'd built together. The hardest part was the nursery. I stood in that yellow room looking at the 2 empty cribs, the changing table I'd assembled with such hope, the stuffed animals we'd received at the baby shower. Everything in that room represented a future that had never existed. I donated it all. Every piece of baby furniture, every tiny outfit, every gift from friends and family who had believed in our happiness. I couldn't bear to keep any of it, but throwing it away felt like admitting the joy I'd felt was worthless. It wasn't worthless. The happiness I'd experienced during those 6 months was real, even if the pregnancy wasn't. That realization took me months of therapy to reach. Yes, therapy. Because discovering that your wife is capable of such elaborate deception doesn't just end a marriage. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and your own judgment. You're not stupid for believing someone you loved, my therapist, Dr. Martinez, told me during one particularly dark session. Sarah spent weeks researching how to make her lies believable. She manipulated your hope and your love against you. That's not a reflection of your intelligence. It's a reflection of her willingness to exploit your trust. The therapy helped, but the real healing came from the people who surrounded me during the worst period of my life. My parents, who could have been bitter about the false hope Sarah had given them, instead focused on supporting me. "We're just glad you found out." "When you did," my mother said. Imagine if this had gone on longer. My best friend Jake, who had been calling me Papa Bear for months, never once made me feel foolish for being deceived. Instead, he helped me move out of the house Sarah and I had shared, packing up 8 years of memories without a single, "I told you so." My co-workers, who had celebrated the pregnancy announcement with genuine joy, rallied around me when the truth came out. They understood that I was grieving not just the end of my marriage, but the loss of the children I'd believed were coming. Even Sarah's own family reached out to apologize. Her sister sent me a long letter explaining that Sarah had always been manipulative, but they'd never imagined she was capable of something so cruel. "We're ashamed of her behavior," she wrote. "You deserved so much better." Slowly, very slowly, I started to rebuild. I moved into a small apartment across town, far from the neighborhood where Sarah and I had planned to raise our family. I threw myself into work, into hobbies I'd neglected, into reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with during the intense baby preparation months. I started dating again after about a year, though it was terrifying. How do you trust someone new when your capacity for trust has been so thoroughly destroyed? How do you share your story without sounding bitter or damaged? But I learned something important during that process. There are people in this world who will hear your story and feel compassion, not judgment. People who understand that being betrayed doesn't make you weak. Surviving it makes you strong. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday, exactly 18 months after Sarah had first shown me those fake ultrasound photos. I signed the papers, in my lawyer's office, officially ending a marriage that had been built on lies. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt free. For the first time in years, my life was completely honest. No lies, no deception, no wondering what was real and what wasn't. Just truth, pure and simple. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. 2 years later, I'm sitting in a different hospital room, holding a different ultrasound photo. But this time, I know it's real. Her name is Emma, and she's 7 months, pregnant with our first child, a son we've decided to name David. Unlike Sarah, Emma encourages me to come to every appointment. She holds my hand when we hear the heartbeat. She guides my palm to her belly when the baby kicks. She shares every moment of this pregnancy with complete openness. The difference is night and day. With Sarah, everything was secretive, controlled, manipulated. With Emma, everything is shared, honest, real. When I place my hand on Emma's stomach and feel our son moving, I know I'm experiencing something authentic. Emma knows my story. I told her on our 3rd date, figuring it was better to scare her away early than to hide something so significant. I expected her to run. Instead, she took my hand and said, "I'm so sorry someone treated you that way. You didn't deserve that." That's when I knew I could love again. Our relationship is built on everything my marriage with Sarah wasn't: honesty, openness, genuine partnership. Emma doesn't just tell me about her doctor's appointments. She insists I be there. She doesn't just show me ultrasound photos. She makes sure I have copies for my wallet. She doesn't just talk about our future, she plans it with me step by step. When people ask how I knew Emma was different, I tell them it was in the small things. The way she left her phone on the counter, without thinking about it. The way she invited me to her appointments before I even asked. The way she talks about our son like he already belongs to both of us. Trust, I learned, isn't just about believing someone won't lie to you. It's about being with someone who makes lying impossible because everything is shared, everything is open, everything is real. I still have moments of fear. When Emma gets quiet, part of me wonders if she's hiding something. When she goes to the doctor alone for routine blood work, a tiny voice in my head asks if I should be suspicious. But I've learned to recognize those moments as echoes of Sarah's betrayal, not reflections of Emma's character. Emma has never given me a reason to doubt her, never been secretive, never been evasive, never made me feel like I was on the outside of my own relationship. The night before I started writing this story, Emma and I were putting together the crib for our son. As I tightened the screws and adjusted the mattress, I thought about the last time I'd assembled a crib. The hope I'd felt then was real, even if the pregnancy wasn't. But this hope is different. It's built on truth, on partnership, on love that doesn't require deception to survive. "What are you thinking about?" Emma asked, watching me from the rocking chair we'd bought the week before. "Just how different this feels," I told her. "How right it feels." She smiled and rubbed her belly. "That's because it is right. We're right in 3 months. I'll hold my son for the first time. I'll look into his eyes and know that he's real, that this moment was built on honesty and love, not lies and manipulation." Sarah's betrayal nearly destroyed my faith in love, in marriage, in my ability to trust another person, but it also taught me to recognize authentic love when I found it. Emma loves me enough to share everything, the good appointments and the concerning ones, the exciting moments and the scary ones, the joy of pregnancy and the fear of becoming parents. She loves me enough to let me be a full partner in this journey. That's what real love looks like. Not the desperate manipulation that Sarah called love, but the generous sharing of a life together. If you've made it this far in my story, I want you to know something. If someone has betrayed your trust the way Sarah betrayed mine, it's not your fault. You're not stupid for believing someone you loved. You're not weak for being devastated when the lies were revealed. What happened to me was cruel and calculated, but it led me to something real. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us clear the path for the best things. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, investigate. If someone you love makes you feel like you're on the outside of your own relationship, ask hard questions. If someone claims to love you but treats you like you can't handle the truth, that's not love. Real love doesn't require lies to sustain it. Real love doesn't manipulate hope against you. Real love shares everything, trusts everything, hopes everything. And sometimes real love comes after the fake love has been exposed and discarded. I'm grateful for that lesson. Even if learning it nearly broke me. What would you have done in my situation? How long would it have taken you to discover the truth? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one.